This episode of the In Focus series features Charles Fernandez. Charles is a promoter of the Hex Fight series, one of the leading mixed martial arts promotions in Australia. Charles, my man, how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's kick it off from this picture here when I first came on board to help out with the show. This time was 2015, I believe. This was Hex 2. It was a big moment for Victoria and combat sports because it was the first cage event. During this time, there was a big race to be the first show to be the first mixed martial arts promotion to be in a cage, and you guys got over the line. And I was speaking to you months prior about Hex 1, and you said you knew of me because you saw my work through our mutual friend, Albert Xavier. I'm curious, how did you get involved with combat sports, and how did you start building the team and choosing the team for Hex Fight series?
That's an interesting story. So, my background was events. So I had previously run nightclubs on a regular basis, also some one-off events and concerts and things like that. So I was familiar with the event space and how to organize an event, venues and things like that. And a good friend of mine, Trent, he was bugging me for a while to start a fight show. And at the time, there was another fight show, and they were dominating the scene, and they were doing things quite well. And one of the things that I've learned is that if there's one dominant player in the space, you don't go against them when they're at the strongest, because they will blow you out of the water pretty quickly. Unless you've got something that's very different and unique, you don't fight the same fight. Pardon the pun.
But that's just business in general too.
Just in general business. So what happened was they started deteriorating. They started making promises that they couldn't fulfill to fighters in terms of title fights and all sorts of things. And there were a couple of fighters that I was sponsoring on a personal level that they sort of stuffed around a little bit. And one day I just turned around to Trent and said, if they do it again, we're starting a fight show. And they did it again, and we started a fight show. So that was sort of how we came about. And Trent had a lot of experience in terms of a wide network within the MMA community. He trained in MMA for a long time, well, for a considerable period of time. I wouldn't say a long time, but he'd gone overseas and things like that. And he had a very strong relationship with a lot of gym owners, trainers, and fighters. So it made sense to pair that up with my marketing experience and event experience. And we kicked it off. Our first show was at Springer's in a boxing ring. And like you just said, that red mat, I'll never forget that red mat. We used that cage once. And that was Hex 2. And at Melbourne Pavilion, we were the first to use the cage.
Just on that, like you said, your first event was at the outer suburbs in the ring as well. What was like transitioning to the Melbourne Pavilion? And did you have this venue in mind, or did you have any other venues in mind when you were looking for the perfect location?
At the time, we didn't really have a venue in mind. I knew Melbourne Pavilion existed. I knew Brian Matruda did some boxing shows there, and he was one of the owners in the venue. And I knew that, I had a feeling that he would accommodate our show because other MMA shows had been staged there before. It's also, I think, important to remember in terms of context, the time at which we launched the promotion. Because if you spoke about MMA in 2015, and members of the fight community might not see this, might not be as aware to this as someone that is dealing with businesses and commercials, and we're trying to talk to potential sponsors. As soon as we said mixed martial arts, they said cage fighting, and they washed their hands. Like every single one just walked away. Like no one wanted anything to do with cage fighting. There was boxing, kickboxing, whatever you want, was all seen as sport, and cage fighting was seen as barbaric, and they didn't want. It was too gruesome and brutal for them to get involved with. That was verbatim. There were some of the words that were said back to us from potential sponsors. So we didn't have a long time to sort of look for a venue. But when we came across Melbourne Pavilion, we started talking to them. They were awesome in terms of accommodating our requests and what we needed and everything like that. So I think the fact that we've been there for all of our Melbourne shows since then talks to the relationship that we've got with the venue and what they've done for us. And while we've shown them such loyalty, except for the Perth shows, all of our shows have, and the first show, all of our shows have been there. So it's a good venue. I mean, just from where you've taken that photo up above in the skybox section, that offers a great view. You've got good views from cage side. You've got big bar that can handle service. You've got a full kitchen. So the venue itself and the change rooms, the venue itself can be geared up quite well to accommodate fight shows. So that was one of the big things that we sort of looked at and one of the boxes that it ticked for us.
That's perfect, man. Now, it was a very big deal for everyone in the sport too. Like a lot of people wanted to be cage side for the first cage event in Victoria. What was it like for yourself working alongside the officials and the sports board, working with the cage? Because it was a first time for many of them. And back then, many of the board members came from a boxing and kickboxing traditional background. So a lot of them were still wrapping their heads around how the cage would be different. What was it like for you to work along with the board?
Yeah, it was, the board was great in terms of supporting us. Greg, pictured there, was absolutely instrumental in pulling things together, and his advice was invaluable in the lead up to the show and even on the show in terms of operation. There was a lot of, I don't want to say confusion, but there was a lot of misinformation about what was allowed, what wasn't allowed, things like that. So, and with so much at stake, I'd basically been told that if something goes wrong here, someone's going to have to, there's a politician that's going to have to resign over it. That's how much was at stake. So it wasn't, as much as it was a sporting event and, you know, the cage being back and all that sort of thing, if we look at it and dissect it, what really transpired? It was still the same rules in a venue that had held a similar event. The only difference was that we replaced the ring with a cage. That was the only difference that happened, but it was such a big deal for the media. I think we were covered.
That's for the people from the outside. When you said something could go wrong, what did you envision? What could go wrong?
Well, anything. Like, you know, if you look at the photos that mainstream media used post event, or even
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Like,
yeah,
it's just ridiculous. And you know, the crowd at an MMA event is very respectful, and they all got along. There was no incidents, and the headline at midnight from the newspaper was something like there wasn't World War III on the streets, something to that effect. Like, they looked for every angle they could to try and throw mud at us, and they just couldn't find it.
They tried very hard. And that was one of the smoothest events I've been to, considering it was a second show as well.
Yeah, it was our second show, a cage. You know, there was a lot at stake. We had Channel 9 and a few other news channels broadcasting from the venue. So, you know, if anything went wrong or if we were sloppy in the area, that it would have been captured by mainstream news channels. So
I mean, Charles, look at your face. You're so cool. How do you maintain all your stress levels?
Yeah, I don't know how cool I was. I think Greg might have been telling me that everything's going okay, and I was happy with that. But there was a lot. There was a lot going on, and a huge team behind it that helped pull everything together.
Just on that, this was a very nice touch having little ribbon here. Did you have anything to say to that?
Yeah. So, what's his name from
the Hulk?
The Hulk was in town for some promo, and we actually got him to open up the cage for Hex 2. So that was, it was good to have him down there. There was a lot of UFC fighters and personalities, MMA personalities at that second show.
It was a very nice monumentous stage for all us martial artists, finally having the cage band lifted and seeing my friend Ryan Barry, who was the first fighter, just enter the cage. It was a big moment for people like us. So it was a really good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was it was more than just a fight show. It signified the importance of lobbying governments to make sports safer, and that people do have a voice and change does happen. So yeah, I'm humbled to be a part of that change.
Yeah. Now, as you touched on before, the first cage event was a big deal. It attracted a lot of media attentions from both sides. As a martial artist and former fighter, it was a very big deal for me. All the years I've had in fight photography to get the opportunity to be cage side for this event, and I'm forever grateful that you gave me the chance to work cage side, even though I couldn't do your first show. You still had me on again. And with all the mainstream outlets involved, you knew some were just out there to get photos of bloodbaths and paint the sport in a bad light. But I felt it was part of my job to capture the artistic side, just to show the sport how I saw it to the wider audience. And you started to run a tighter ship on the kind of media you let be cage side. What's your process on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about representing something in its truest form. So if it is a war, I don't expect you to get photos without any blood on it. But if 9 out of the 10 fights ended by a submission and the only photo that you're showing is the one where the guy got his nose broken, that's not a fair representation of what happened. So like I said, and that's one of the things why we were so strict about our media briefs and who can go near the cage, and we have to approve the photos and things like that, because as long as the photos were fair, and I think to this day, I haven't rejected a single photo. I've not. So from any of the photographers that have submitted photos to us for approval, I don't think I've rejected a single one, because there's always been a fair representation, in terms of my view, a fair representation of the event. And that's all that we ever wanted and asked for. You can't control mainstream media. Going to do what they're going to do, and they will literally take photos. If you saw the latest Ben Sassoli news article, they talk about a UFC fighter and use hex videos in the article, or hex images. You can't control what people are going to do. They're gonna do things for clickbait, and they're going to do things to get a reaction. So be it. But as far as what we can control of what our event looks like to people, we try to portray it in the fairest possible way and the most balanced. We're not trying to say that people are in there and no one gets hurt. No, that's not what happens. But as long as there's a fair coverage, I'm happy with that. I'm good with that.
And as strict as your brief was, I thought it was very fair. You have to have that level of trust with your media people too, your videographers and photographers. And that's what I say to promoters. The people you have taking footage of your fight promotion, you have to understand what they're using it for. Are they doing it for themselves? Are they trying to tarnish the sport in a bad light? Because whatever they do is going to reflect on your promotion.
100%. And the last thing you want is, 3 photographers that get in the way of you, for example, when I've briefed you personally about the money shots that I want out of particular fights or particular parts of the event. And I've told you specifically what photos I want, because I know you're capable of those photos. And I tell, like Sheldon, for example, particular parts of videos that I want from him to capture. I don't want other people that are just taking photos or doing media to get in their way. Like it's counterproductive. So I think coordinating that is a big must.
Definitely.
And that comes back to sort of the events side of things. Like when I used to run concerts and things like that, you have AAA passes are only for your top tier photographers that know not to stand in the way of the crowd, know not to get too close to the artist.
It's a production thing. Going back cage side, ringside, you don't want to be walking around because you're covering the paying customers from the front row. You're covering the video 100%. Production. You got to think about the bigger picture, not just yourself. Now, from the very first fight all the way to the last fights, did the fights play out to how you envisioned it to play out?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to know how fights are going to go. Like you look at any promotion, you look at the UFC or any boxing, kickboxing fight or whatever it might be. You match fights based on what you think is going to be an exciting fight, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. And I think Stephen Kennedy's fight there, I think that ended in a head kick knockout.
I think that was the one with Callan Potter.
Callan Potter, that was a knockout, head kick?
Submission knockout. Submission.
Submission? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that night we had a fair few knockouts, and yeah, I mean, all you can ask for is that fighters go in there and give it their all. You can't make an exciting fight any other way. Like you match them based on their skills and their their backgrounds, whether they're strikers and grapplers, etc. And you hope that it's exciting on the night.
Yep. Now, your first time as a promoter in a cage, did you get to see much of the fights, or were you running around backstage taking phone calls every few minutes?
No, yeah, there was a lot of running around. There was a lot of running around. It wasn't it wasn't many fights that I caught. Yeah, start to finish. It was more on the replays that I got a lot of that stuff.
Just on talking about the shows, what was it like being the new kid on the block?
Look, I'll say that some promoters were very forthcoming and very helpful and reached out to us and said, if you need anything, let me know, and were supportive of what we were doing. There were others that were not so supportive and maybe had their own agenda, and I'm not going to go into that, but it is what it is. Like we never went out there to step on anyone's toes or to run anyone out of business or anything like that. We went out there to deliver the best possible promotion that we could deliver, show after show. And I think if you chronologically watch the shows and document the production and what's involved in terms of, if you just look at the cameras that Paris uses from the first show to show 16 when you got into the, I think that's when they've stayed the same since then. But, our whole team and everyone that's involved will come to us with different ideas. Like Paris will say, hey, what about this? Or, we can get a crane, for example. I think show 8, maybe, we got the crane in for the first time.
That's a good memory.
Is it? I don't know.
It was 8.
Yeah, because I know that we were on Fox that for 8th show. So that, and he told us about that before, but, we weren't ready for that, to step up to that level. And then we find out that we're going to be on Fox Sports, and we've got that in the bank. We're like, yeah, Paris, let's go. Let's redo our graphics. Let's get the crane in. Let's, do a bit more. And then we go to our production guys in terms of the walkout and the lighting and say, well, what else can we do?
Yeah.
And, everyone sort of comes together and puts their input, and then we tick off certain things, whatever we can make happen, and it goes from there. So in terms of us coming out there and finding our place, I think it wasn't so much that we were looking for acceptance or anything from anyone. It was more, we just come out there and do the best job we can. And I think a lot of promoters realize that, maybe not straight away, but a bit later on. I think they realize that we were just trying to put on some good shows and good fights.
You touched on something very interesting too. You were given a chance to go on Fox early on, but you didn't take that opportunity just yet. I feel like you have to get the ball going first, make sure you had a good run of it before going too big too quickly, because we've seen shows in the past go too big too quickly, like the first show having all these UFC, ex-UFC fighters coming on, and then they don't have enough runway to get them to the next stage, whereas you took things at the right time and, catapulted yourself when you thought you were ready.
Yeah, I think timing is a big thing. Timing is extremely important. As much as, we'd done 7 shows successfully before that, we're still learning. Every time you do a show, you're always learning and you're always tweaking, tightening things up and improving things. But, you have one shot at going live on Fox Sports. You make a mess of that, and I don't know anyone else that's going to give you another shot. And
That was a very tight ship that night. The first time, because when I boxed, I remember everyone was on edge.
yeah, I mean, because some of the requirements as well in terms of you know, just things that you don't even consider for other shows, like walkout music, all has to be censored. It can't. There's no swearing in the walkout songs, and every fighter wants to have a hardcore rap song or rock song, and every second word's a swear word. So who's going to listen to those songs? And sometimes at other shows, I've literally seen fighters on the night hand the music up to the DJ. Like, nah, that can't happen.
That still happens, man.
Oh no, I believe it, but like we didn't allow that on that show just because there was too much at stake. Just even the amount of access at the back and things like that, and it's you definitely have to time up to be ready to broadcast at that level.
Now, I'm guessing this might have something to do with your background in marketing, but I felt like for the time, the attention to details, the logos, the branding, the artwork, the banners, gloves, t-shirts, medals, and even the fight cards was on point. Like you remained consistent throughout all of it. Was this something you had envisioned from the start?
Yeah, absolutely. The building a brand is probably the single biggest thing that I've focused on in any business, really, because it is the only thing that talks to people when you're not there to explain it. I can send someone a Hex logo that's in the fight community, and they'll be able to tell you what Hex stands for and what the show's about. You can send someone a logo of a mediocre show, and they'll tell you that's a rat shit show. Like, your brand is what speaks to people when you're not there to explain anything. So building a brand has always been at the forefront of anything we've done, which is why we up our production level and all that sort of stuff, like the t-shirts, giving your sponsors exposure and recognition for what they've done for you as well. So they're on the media wall there, which was I don't know if that show was live streamed. That would have been forced. I don't think that was a live stream, but that would have been the photos would have circulated around, and between the photos that you took, that the video that Tom would have done and Sherwin would have done, the photos that each of the teams took, etc. So even though it's a small thing, it's still getting their logo out there, and it's about brand recognition. So for the same reason that they sponsor us, we need to invest in our brand and make sure that things are on point, because otherwise it's going to be hard to attract big sponsors. If you don't care about your brand, they're not going to care about your brand.
I completely agree. At the end of the day, it's just two guys fighting in a cage or fighting in the ring, but it's the people around the fight and the brand that really matters. It's who's involved and what you stand for, and you said that perfectly.
Yeah.
And even during this time, sometimes I find that, weigh-ins is part of the fights as it is the fight night itself. And sometimes there's very little care given to weigh-ins, but the weigh-ins for Hex, it was a bit of a spectacle, the media wall, everyone gets t-shirts. There's a bit of promotional work that happens behind there. You had the ring girls helping out as well. What's it like coming to your first weigh-ins, and have you been to many before the Hex shows? Because I know it can be a bit of a different experience for people.
Nah, it was so I'd never been to a weigh-in before Hex. So yeah, it was definitely a new experience for me. But we wanted to make it more about the experience in terms of Hex. Hex being more like a show as opposed to just 10 fights on a card. Like, we did the line, and then we did the sword fighting in the breaks, doing things like that, and the cheerleaders for one of the shows as well. Doing things like that is makes it more of a show as opposed to just a fight. So you can go there with your partner and have a few drinks. You're going to sit in comfort, have a good view of the fights, and you're also getting some other entertainment included. Like, it's not just go there, go to the bar, get sloshed, and watch some watch some guys try to knock each other out. It's more than that.
Yeah.
And so the weigh-ins was an extension of that in terms of as part of the experience. So we had people come down just for the weigh-ins to watch the weigh-ins and then come to the show the next day. They weren't there with a team or anything. They just wanted to come down and be a part of it. So the Lion Hotel, they used to get packed. That was jam-packed at certain points. And that was
it usually happens on a Thursday night, Friday night, either a uni night or it's like an after work drink. So it was a perfect venue, a perfect location just to get all the attention coming to you guys.
Yeah. That was another bonus. So no, they've been good supporters of Hex, and they've done some good things for us too. So they're an awesome venue to work with.
Now, just in this photo here, I like to remind people that many of the top superstars you see today all came from local shows in Australia, like Hex, guys like Jimmy Crute and also Callan. Now, these guys were already local favorites before hitting the UFC scene, and they built their name from shows like Hex Fight Series. What's it like to have worked with these guys and seeing them build the brand of Hex and going to where they are now?
Man, seeing some of these guys go on to bigger shows is humbling, because like Callan, there he's wearing our belt, but and that photo's in the Hex cage. So that for him to get signed to the UFC, Jim Crute having all of his professional fights on Hex, there's nothing. It's hard to explain, because it's something like you've seen someone come along and maybe they're having their first fight or whatever. You're not sure where they're going to go, and all of a sudden they're on a tear in the UFC. Like it's exciting to watch. And I know that when Jim Crute was on the Contender Series, Sherwood and me were in my factory. We were here and we were screaming while we were watching the stream. Like we were getting that excited. Even I think I've watched all of his fights since then. So it's been amazing. They've been truly awesome in terms of not just we're in the UFC, see you later. Jim's come back to several shows. Jim's dad gets involved with the shows as well, and they've been long-time supporters of Hex. So I'm always grateful for their support and everything that those guys do as well.
And it's great to see them giving back. I think that's just the martial artist in them. It's almost like they're acting as a great ambassador for the brand and for the sport.
100%, because I think they, a lot of people look up to them. Young fighters, new fighters look up to them, and they've seen the path that they've taken to get to where they're going, and they're their role models and mentors, and so they should be. So I think it's important for them to get back to give back to these guys and give them, because it can seem like a long way away. Like, the UFC is such a big promotion, and if you're starting in a little gym somewhere in outer suburbs, it can seem like a distant dream for a kid that really wants to make it. So, having these guys around and knowing that they're human, they've achieved it, it gives them inspiration. So, these guys are absolutely awesome.
It comes down to timing as well. You started in 2015. Between 2015 and 2017, a lot of people were getting signed, and Hex was almost a platform where everyone built their name, gained their experience, and became a household favorite. It was almost a launching platform. So it was really great to see people coming from shows like this onto the next stage.
Yeah. I think in one period of time, I was counting them and then I lost count, but I think Hex released more fighters to the UFC over a 6-month period than any other promotion in the world. I was just looking at the numbers, like, not just released fighters, but fighters that had their last fight on Hex. You look at Israel. Israel had his last fight on Hex before going to the UFC.
That highlight's still circulating over Instagram.
Oh yeah, that's it's got some views too. Suman, Ashkan, the few ATT. Few from the ATT crew that made it to the UFC. There's been heaps and heaps. So it was good to have eyes like that from the big show. It was also, as unreservedly, I was more than happy for them to go, but it's like you're taking all our talent. Like you're taking our best fighters, you know. Like, I mean, we've got to go out there and fight some more, which is always good. But it's also hard for a promotion to balance getting new fighters and fighters that are made it and that are almost household names and about to crack into the big league, because they're the biggest ticket sellers, right? So they're going to draw the biggest crowds and biggest pay-per-views and all that sort of thing. And then as you lose them, and you lose like a lot of them in one go, it's you got to rebuild. So awesome that they did it, because there's nothing greater than seeing them go on to bigger things. But it's just something that, as a promotion, that we need to keep doing.
Well, you guys have done it many times before, and I'm sure you guys can do it again.
Yeah, we will.
Back to the production side of things, I think there was a time from Hex 4 or Hex 5 onwards that you tried changing up the various sets and visuals until you found what you wanted. I think that was the lion or dragon thing you were talking about here.
Yeah.
And then there was a smoke entrance as well. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure that would have come from your events background as well.
Yeah, Paris hates that smoke. It messes with all these cameras. But in terms of the ambience, and I think the what it adds to the people that are in the venue, it's a different sort of vibe. So you're absolutely right. We changed things up, and I don't know that we've stopped changing things up. We kept on evolving and tweaking different things. You'll see those tubes that are in that picture there. They made an appearance for about 3 or 4 shows because they were pretty cool. But
light tubes?
They're coloured. I think they changed.
Yeah.
All different colours. But the entrance changed a number of times. I don't think the entrance has ever sort of been the same for more than one show. So we.
This was a very cool entrance.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Even the one with the like the platform.
Yeah.
That was I'm always amazed at what the guys do in terms of sound and lighting and just making the venue, transforming the venue. And when you look at it on camera, you almost can't tell where it is.
Yeah, that's big. Like for me, it's not just about the fight; it's about the ambience and atmosphere for each event. Because I know you took that very seriously, so I wanted to make sure each event was different than the next, and I wanted to capture that the best I could through photography. So you guys have something to look back on.
I think that's very. You just nailed it. It's very, very important. When we look at just simple things like we'll turn the music on and we stand in the back. We stand where the general mission is, and we're like, "There's not enough bass." Ordering more subs, things like that, because it's not. Like I was saying before, it's about the show and the experience. You don't want, shit quality speakers and sound, and people are like, "Oh yeah, good show," but I couldn't hear anything, or the music was off, or whatever it is. So it's about the detail and all of the things combined that make it what it is.
Now, it was my first time at a show where I got to witness a backstage rules meeting like this with our referee, Greg Klingens. What was it like with you being backstage with the ref, the officials, and all the trainers and fighters backstage like this?
To be completely honest, I don't think I've even sat in a rules meeting. That was more Greg would run it, and Trent and Jess would be in the back with the fighters and coaches, and to iron out any questions or issues that they may have had, because they were the ones that dealt with the contracts, the fighters, the managers. So they were the ones that handled it. But no, I mean, like I said before, Greg's absolutely, he's a wealth of knowledge. You can ask him any question about rules, MMA, anything in general, and he'll give you a very, very complete answer. So having him run that, I was more than at ease for him to run that on his own, confident that he would do what he needed to and the right thing by the promotion.
Thinking about what he's saying right now, that can really affect the promotion side of things, how the show's going to run. Having everyone on board on the rule set here, it's going to prevent misunderstandings in the cage afterwards, especially when it's a live event.
100%. You know, you've got yeah. I mean, you get controversy in the biggest, you know, boxing or kickboxing or MMA shows in UFC, like especially when it comes down to scoring. Scoring is a different kettle of fish altogether. You know, you never get people that say eye to eye, and that's because it's a lot of it's perception. But it's yeah, the rules that Greg made clear. I don't think anyone can actually argue that they didn't know or they weren't told about something at a Hex event, because I think he made it abundantly clear what was expected and what was allowed.
Yep. Moving on to this backstage vibe here. What was it like working with the team from Kunlun, and what were some of the success stories or learnings you learned from this event?
It's up to you whether you want to put this in there, right? But yeah, Callan were an absolute nightmare to work with. They were everything was okay in the lead up to it, and we had some some contracts between us about how it was going to play out, and then the goalposts started shifting when they wanted certain stickers on the cage floor that weren't there, and they had to get printed up. And it's a special material. It's a very specialized material that we use for the stickers on the floor. It's a non-slip, but it's a very high grade. So it's not just something that you can go to most printers and get. I keep a roll of that, and it's very expensive stuff. So I keep a roll of it only for Hex. But had I not had that, we wouldn't have had those stickers and been able to do it. The demands just started rolling in, and a lot of promises were made around contribution of funds and things like that never eventuated. So we're like, that event, we were left high and dry, you know, close to six figures. So that was, yeah, it was disappointing. It was very disappointing to see that, you know, we went all out. You look at everything about that event, and it was massive in terms of production and everything that we had to do. We ticked all the boxes that they stipulated, and yeah, I felt like we got the raw end of that deal. So the learnings, I guess, out of that was that it would take a lot for me to partner with another promotion.
Well, like we said earlier, the brand is really important to what you do, and me having a good relationship with you, knowing who to report to provide the services was really important. When I was at this event, it felt a bit different. I didn't feel like I knew my place, and I remember speaking to you, and you just said, "You do your thing, and we'll take care of the rest." Like having that, knowing that you had my back was really important, so I knew I could get the job done.
Yeah, because I think they tried to overrun the event, and I'm like, nah.
It's like two conflicting brands. So it was really difficult on my part too, because at the end of the day, I'm working for Hex, so no matter what they say, I'll report back to you.
Yeah, and operationally, we were meant to run the show. So if we're running the show, why is anyone getting involved in the decisions that are being made? Because they were interfering with Paris in the back, and Paris was getting stressed out, and Paris is instrumental to what we do. We've never done a show without Paris. I won't do a show without Paris. Like, he's absolutely critical to the success of our show. So whatever Paris says, ultimately, whether we argue about things, it's not an argument, it's a discussion, but we're so passionate about what we're after that, you know, sometimes other people might think it's an argument, but we discuss things to the point where it's what's in the best interest of the brand. Like I was saying, we want smoke in there. Paris, it messes with his cameras, so it's a bit of tug of war, and then we come to a compromise and we roll out with it. But Paris and his whole team, I could genuinely say, have got Hex best interests when they work on the show. It's not just a job for them. For everyone that I've dealt with on his team, they're passionate about it. They're proactively trying to improve and lift our brand. They're not just rocking up to work for 3 hours or 5 hours or whatever and just pushing some buttons and going home. They're really invested in it. So when they're coming to me and they're complaining about things that Callan is running up and saying to them about their new requirements that have never been stipulated before, but all of a sudden they want us to do like jump through hoops for them. It's just not going to happen. Like, you're not going to stress out my team when it's showtime. You should have done this a week ago. You should have done it a day ago. I don't care when you did it, but you're not doing it at the show. Like, it's just, you know, got to the point where I had no choice. I had to put my foot down and say, pull rank and say, no, it's a Hex show now. We're doing it our way. Like, because you can't, you know, people being under stress, especially when your production guys are in charge of the replays, they're in charge of fading different cameras. If they're under pressure because someone's standing behind them telling them what to do, all they're going to do is make mistakes. Like, it's just, it's human nature. So,
Yeah.
You know, it's just something that we had to deal with that event. It was disappointing because it should have been so much more than what it was. But you live, you learn, and you know, not everything is just because they're a massive promotion in China and they've got massive numbers behind them and all that sort of thing, doesn't mean that they're the right fit for us.
Well, it's great to see you guys moving forward from this in a good way. And what kind of lessons did you learn from this to keep Hex as its own entity?
Well, I think it always was, and we were pretty adamant that it would be a co-promoted show as opposed to, I mean, you look at that on the mat. I don't think they've done another show with another promotion where we've had equal representation at the actual event or on the promotional material. Because I wasn't going to be diluted into, it's their show, but we're helping them, or it's, you know, we're a sub brand and we don't get prominent placement. If we're going 50-50, we're 50-50. We're not going to just take a back seat and let you run the show, because they want to, like, even at the weigh-ins, they tried to get fighters to wear their clothes from their sponsors or whatever.
That was a very stressful weigh-in. I remember pulling 5 so many times saying, hey, where do I...
No, and in the end, I think we just said, if the fighters want to wear it, and I think they offered up some cash to these guys, and we said, if they want to wear it, they can wear it. If they don't, they don't. We're not forcing them to wear it. We don't force our fighters to wear Hex stuff. They wear the Hex stuff because they want to wear it, not because, you know, it's part of their contract or anything like that. They can wear whatever they want, and we understand that they've got sponsors that they need to look after. They've got bills to pay, and purses are only for that night. Like, fighters have to train, you know, whether it's full-time or part-time. They've got expenses and living expenses outside of just training. So they've got sponsors that they need to look after and put on their T-shirt and clothing and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
we get it. Like, so we're not going to restrict them from doing that. And then they came along and they're like, hey, you need to wear these tracksuits. And I'm like, nah, you don't have to do anything. So I think Trent had a good explained it pretty clearly to them that they didn't have to do anything that they didn't want to do. So yeah, that was that.
Now, talking about other promotions, what was it like coming to this promotion here? And do you know where that is?
Yeah, that was a Rebellion. Is it St Kilda Town Hall?
Yeah, St Kilda Town Hall. After all these years, I kept nagging you should come to one. I don't know what excuses you gave me, but finally I saw you ringside with you and Sherman right there, and it was a very bloody fight too. What was it like coming to your first? Was it your first Thai boxing show?
It was. Second, but this was by far like an experience like I've never had. I think, I'm definitely keen. Even Sherman, we're both definitely keen to come back to another show. That was Size. He looked after us, and that was amazing experience.
Being there as a guest, you had no stress on you. Did you have any? What was the experience like? And did you take ideas or inspiration on the production side of things?
Yeah, I always, it's very different when you go there as a patron to enjoy the show as opposed to you're running it. And at one point there was like an audio glitch, and I was just thinking to myself, man, I'm glad I don't have to deal with this right now. Like, otherwise it would have been me running around. But I've always liked Size Brandy. I think he's someone that completely understands branding and marketing and positioning in the market. If you look at his, one of the things that I've always looked at is his videos. I think you do his videos, don't you? You and Tom.
Tom, I'd help him with the artwork, but even Si runs a very tight ship on who he allows to even have the footage. Like I said, if some Joe Blow comes and takes bad photos of the night, it's going to reflect on the brand. Someone's going to see that and think, oh, Rebellion's putting out poor content.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We ran a tight show that was well organized. There was because I think you guys had Roots before that during the day, right? And I because we came, I think, at the tail end of that. So man, to go show back to back like that, I don't know. Si's asking for trouble. He's going to run himself into the country.
I was there from maybe 10 a.m. I think the rest of the team were there from 6 or 7 a.m. And you guys rocked up at about, I don't know when you came, but you guys didn't even stay for the whole night. You left at, I don't know, 12 a.m. and things didn't get juiced till about 1 a.m.
Really?
Oh, it was a late night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was, that was crazy. And yeah, sitting on that ring was, that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool experience.
Did you guys get any blood or sweat on you?
We probably ate some in the chips that were like in front of us. But, it was we were close enough to the action, but I don't know that we got any blood on us.
That's a rookie's mistake, because that's something that John the McCauley and the ring girls and I know. Whenever there's food there, you have your towel that's covering the food when the fight's happening. Especially when I'm working, I make sure it's covered so that anything happens, my food's protected, so I don't catch any of that nasty stuff.
It's a good tip.
Moving forward,
I don't sit VIP often enough to know these sort of tips. So.
That's a very good point. Moving on to our last photo. What future plans do you have for Hex moving forward 2021 with the state of the world and what's going on right now?
Yeah, good question. Really good question, because right now, not a lot is going on. But stay tuned. I don't want to give too much away, but stay tuned, because there's something pretty exciting that's on the horizon. So we're looking at our next show is, if all goes well and we return to some kind of normality and don't get shut down again, is probably going to be late March, and that'll be following on from a Path to Hex show, which is the amateur pro-am show. There's a couple of pro fights, but it's mainly amateurs. So that will it'll follow on from that. But in terms of what we're doing, there's a much more strategic alliance with some media networks abroad. So
that's some pretty exciting news.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, Charles, I can't wait to hopefully be there helping you guys out. And thank you so much for your time for coming onto the show.
No problem at all. Thank you.